Hey guys, welcome back to Berger Ops. Today's episode is fully sponsored by DiscontinuedDecals.com. They are an awesome company that specializes in making vinyl decals for vintage cars, trucks, boats, snowmobiles, you name it. They've been great to work with. They helped us out with the decals for this 90-horse Johnson outboard that I have behind me. They also are the people that supplied the decals for the 50-horse Johnson outboard that used to be on this bass boat. And they also were kind enough to hook us up with some Stratos decals that we're gonna put on the boat today. So definitely check them out if you have any vinyl needs. They're great. Send them an email. They're easy to work with, they respond fast, and I'm honestly super happy to be working with them, and I'm looking forward to the relationship going forward. All right, so here's the new decals from Discontinued Decals, the Stratos logo. Just so you guys know, Discontinued Decals does include instructions with all of their vinyl decals, and they usually give you a squeegee as well to help put them on properly without air bubbles and other things that can be a nuisance when it comes to putting on vinyl decals like this. I'm not going to necessarily follow the directions to a T, but I have read the directions. I've done this a bunch with all kinds of different stuff over the years. So I'm going to walk you through my process and kind of fill you in on things that they tell you you should and shouldn't do as well as we go. Throughout this process, we're going to try to keep these decals out of the sunlight. Once they're on the boat, we're going to eventually put a tiny bit of wax over them just to give them some UV protection. These decals are going to go right up here on the boat inside of this gray area. And usually what I like to do is first we're going to take the wax off of the finish here. This is a newly polished and waxed finish. Once we get the wax off, then we're going to go ahead and kind of get this lined up where we want to go. Right now I'm just making sure that they're going to fit where they should, and it looks like it's actually perfect. All right, so one of the first things that Discontinued Decals will recommend in their instructions before you start applying decals to whatever it is that you're applying them to is that you start off with a clean, smooth surface. So this surface is clean in a sense, and it is smooth, but I know that there's a layer of wax on that, like what I just talked about in the last clip. So what we're gonna do is take some denatured alcohol, which I have right here, and we're gonna just wipe off this area very well to make sure that there's no wax between the decal and the actual finish of the boat that's gonna prevent that decal from adhering properly. All right, so you don't need a ton of this stuff, but you wanna make sure that that rag is fairly saturated, and just give that a really nice wipe down. Feel for any rough spots. I don't feel anything, but if you do feel any rough spots, that's usually a good indication that you should either sand it smooth and polish it, or if you don't, you're probably gonna get some bubbles in the decal, which doesn't always look so great. So we're just gonna give this a nice wiping down. Get that nice and clean before we apply these decals. Sometimes it can't hurt to kind of refold the rag so that the wax doesn't just kind of get smeared around on one side. It kind of gives you a new fresh surface to pull more wax off of that area. All right, so once you get that surface nice and clean and you're confident that it's clean, you want to try to limit how much you touch that surface with your fingertips or hands in general. You have oil on your hands that will prevent that decal from adhering. Usually not that much of a problem, but it's something just to be aware of. So we're gonna not touch that with our hands for now, and we're gonna start lining up this decal. So now that we're fairly confident that we have a clean surface to start with, we're gonna go ahead and tack this decal on there in roughly the position that we want it. Usually what I do is take a few small pieces of painter's tape, as you can see there, and that just gives me something to tack this to the boat with and kind of move it around, get it about where I want, and then we can get more serious about actually putting the decal on. So I'm not a huge fan of precision measuring when it comes to putting these decals on. I tend to trust my eyes more than I trust doing math. Didn't do very well in math in school, but I imagine there's probably a lot of you guys out there that can sympathize with that. So anyway, I digress. We're gonna go ahead and line these up as close to these edges as we can. We're trying to make everything kind of equidistant and centered. So it is a little bit tricky. Your eyes will play tricks on you. But the good part is that nothing is sticking to anything yet besides this little piece of tape, which we can always move around. So we're gonna give that a little tack there, this little tack here, and see roughly where we're sitting. All right, so we've kind of shuffled this around a little bit and we've got it pretty close to where I think I want it. So at this point, we're gonna go ahead and give this a few more tacks. Now, some people will call these hinges, or I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can call this method. But basically what we're doing is making a hinge system so that this decal can fold up. We can clean it one more time, and then we can set it back down. Now, if you look, I did it on purpose the way that I did, because I don't want this decal, if I let go, when I'm putting this on, if I let go and it falls and sticks to the boat, that's not gonna be fun, because then we're gonna have to peel that decal back off and we risk damaging it, ripping the vinyl, and it just turns into a mess. So I'm purposely letting this hang so that it doesn't touch the boat. Some people will also, in my case, the hull of the boat is angled away from me, which makes this easier. But if it was angled toward me and this was gonna fall and touch the side of the boat, just due to gravity, what you might want to do is hinge it from the bottom so that it falls down on the bottom, and then you can squeegee it up onto the boat from the bottom using a hinge down here. So I think I have this pretty much set. I'm just kind of going through, adding a few more of these little hinges just to make sure that this is on there pretty well. I don't want it moving around on me. As you can see, I'm not really sticking those to the boat too hard, because if I have to move it quickly, I don't want to have to fight the tape. So I just want to make sure that it's where it wants to be. This is probably a little bit excessive, but that's how I like to do it. All right, so now that we have this where we think we want it, we're gonna double check all of our edges, make sure that everything still looks good, nothing's moved. We're gonna go ahead and wipe this down one more time under here, make sure that it's clean and also dry. And then we're gonna go ahead and start applying this decal. So we're gonna give this a little bit of time to air dry. It's a fairly warm, dry day out, so it shouldn't take very long. Alcohol evaporates really fast. So we're just gonna give that a little bit of time and come back in about a minute or two, and then we'll start actually applying this decal, and I'll show you how I do that. All right, so in your kit from Discontinued Decals, you're gonna get one of these little squeegees. As you can see, they put their name right on there. So we're gonna use this squeegee to lay this down on. Usually I like to start at least if I'm working from the top down, I like to start from an upper corner and squeegee down. So obviously it's gonna be against the boat, so I'm gonna be kind of pushing in this motion and working my way all the way down the end of the decal. Where I usually start is at one of these corners here, and I'll peel the backing tape off of the decal and slowly start laying it on. So before we do that, one more quick double check, make sure that everything is pretty close to where we want it. And now we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so everything's set to go. We've let the denatured alcohol dry out underneath the decal. We know that our hinge is sturdy, everything's clean, and it's exactly where we want it. So we're gonna go ahead and start by pulling the backing tape off of this upper right corner here. Now, when you pull this backing tape off, the idea is to pull the backing tape down so that you have something to pull against and slowly work the decal on. Now the transfer tape on top of the decal is going to keep everything in place regardless of the backing tape being on or off. So we're going to go ahead and start this. Sometimes it's a little tricky to get it started. And we're just going to fold this down like this. So as you can see, I've started this, but the decal is not actually touching the boat yet. So I'm going to give a little fold here in that paper, and I'll be able to pull on this slowly. So a little crease under there, and now I'm gonna slowly start working this decal down onto the boat. Just like this, we'll start at the upper corner, and we're just gonna slowly start working this down. So my arm's probably gonna be blocking this process, but usually I like to scrape toward the direction that I'm working and laying the decal down. So I like to be going this way, but my arm is kind of blocking that. So I'm going to try to do this as carefully as I can. So you want to apply that nice and firm down there. Now, if you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but where this backing paper is creating an air gap between the actual decal and the boat, which is good because that air gap is preventing this decal from sticking until the squeegee actually gets there. And I get to control when that squeegee gets there. That makes a huge difference in preventing bubbling and wrinkling and different things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and keep working on this. So we're just slowly working our way down this decal. And we're trying to make sure that we don't get too carried away too fast, because we don't want any air bubbles. So as you can see, I keep pulling this paper down as I'm squeegeeing. Pulling this paper down makes a little air gap there, and I can maintain how big that air gap is as I start to squeegee. All right, so we're finally getting to the end of where this decal needs to be. We had one little bit of a hiccup there where I had to resituate the tape. Sometimes those things happen when you're putting these decals on, but the beauty is that if you prepare ahead of time, it makes those little hiccups easier to deal with. So, I'm just gonna keep slowly pulling. I'm just gonna check my reference point one more time for the end of the decal. Everything still looks pretty good. This last piece of tape off here. We're just gonna lay this right down slowly. Now at the end of a decal, you always want to slow down and take your time. This backing paper wants to come off at this point. It's almost falling off. But you want to, I'm kind of controlling both the front, the transfer tape, and the backing paper at the same time to make sure that it doesn't do anything funny right at the end. So I'm slowly controlling that down. And then right at the end, when we have just a tiny little bit of the star here left, we're just gonna push that right down. All right, so at this point, the decal is on the boat. Now I'm gonna show you the next steps to actually finishing the decal and taking the transfer tape off. All right, now that the decal is firmly adhered to the boat, we've double checked everything. We went over it one more time with the squeegee to make sure that everything's pressed down, there's no bubbles, wrinkles. Now we're ready to take the transfer tape off. So we're just gonna get one little fingernail under the corner of the transfer tape, and you wanna be very careful not to pull the transfer tape out away at like a perpendicular angle or 90-degree angle to the surface. You actually wanna pull it as close to the surface as you can. So I'm not gonna pull out, I'm gonna pull this tab down, and I'm gonna push it so that it's at a sharp angle to the boat. Now the reason that you pull at this sharp break angle here for the transfer tape is because sometimes if you don't, it has a tendency to pull the decal back off the boat if it's not firmly adhered yet. So at this point, you're basically done. As I said at the beginning of the video, it really can't hurt to take a small bit of like UV protectant wax. It doesn't have to be anything super special, but usually whatever I put on the boat, I'll put a light coat over the decal, and try to be careful about getting a ton of extra wax built up around the edges of the decal. Putting that fine layer of wax over the decal will help preserve the decal and help it last quite a bit longer while it's out in the weather and subjected to sun and cold and rain throughout the years of use of your boat. That's basically my process for installing these vinyl decals. Again, I want to say a big thanks to Discontinued Decals for supplying these and for sponsoring Berger Ops. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode. Peace.